What are you looking at, butthead?
So, The Descent from 2005. I wanted to see this movie for a while as well. It's always made it to certain lists of, underrated horror movies or surprisingly good um, horror movies that kind of went under the radar when they were released or something like that. And so it was always kind of in the back of my mind, I want to check it out. And people said, yeah, if you want to see like a good, decent horror movie, that's a little bit newer. It was a really good one to check out. So, and I'd heard of the writer director. His name's Neil Marshall. So he did a movie called Dog Soldiers before this. That's supposed to also be a really good horror movie. It's about werewolves, I believe. I still need to check that one out. He did Doomsday, which is like a post-apocalyptic movie after this from 2008. I've seen that one. That's decent. And then he did a movie called Centurion. I think that has Michael Fassbender. It's like Centurion is like Roman soldiers, but so that's him. He wrote and directed this, and it's about a group of women. It starts out they're all whitewater rafting. At least a group of them. There's about four, and we see they get done rafting. Let's see, one of our main women is Sarah. She has a little daughter, and her husband are the daughter and husband are waiting for them to get done, and they get done rafting, and they're leaving in the car, and a pretty devastating accident occurs with the family. And so, I mean, a little bit of a spoiler: the husband and daughter die, and I think they're somewhere in like Scotland or Ireland, but she has to recover in the hospital for quite a while, and then it quick cuts to about a year later, and so this group of women are going to go on. They do like an annual trip apparently, and so that's what they're doing for whitewater rafting, and they're going to do some spelunking this time and try to help Sarah, get over that huge loss and stuff. And so they're all going spelunking, and they're in the America now. I think they're in the Appalachians somewhere. Gonna do some cave diving. That's the plan. And there's a big group of them now. There's about, let's see, six of them. It's their friends from the beginning. So there's Sarah as their main character, Juno, Beth, Rebecca, Sam, Holly. A couple of them are sisters, and just a couple friends that are tagging along with the group. I don't want to get into all of the group dynamics, but so they think they're going to a cave, and Juno has set it all up, but turns out they're not going to the actual cave that they thought they were going to. Juno took them to an undocumented cave, or a unexplored cave. She wanted them to be the first ones there, and you get that vibe right away. She like leaves a guidebook behind, and she's just being kind of shady about the whole getting there and everything. So starts out, you can feel like a lot of tension between Sarah and Juno and some of those girls that were in the group before. And then once they find out that they're in a different cave and a couple things start going wrong, one of them almost gets stuck in a crawl space. Sarah does. She like spazzes out, and they all realize that she's took them to the wrong cave, and nobody would know that they're there. The tensions then really start to rise, and it's really good. It starts out it's just like this group dynamic between all these girls, their history, their past together, and there's a ton of claustrophobia that's created within these caves, especially at that. That's probably like one of the pinnacle moments is when Sarah gets stuck crawling in through one of these spaces, and you feel that. And like I don't know, I've never put myself in a lot of weird claustrophobic settings, but it's not hard to imagine just feeling completely trapped. And so that's pretty intense. It works really well, and then it turns from that into just more of a straightforward horror scenario, and they start realizing there's other creatures in this cave, and you get glimpses of them, and then after a while you can see them, and they're pretty nasty looking. They're in the dark all the time, so they're like pale white, and they all start getting attacked, and this just turns into surviving this cave, trying to find a way out. and it's pretty intense. So yeah, that's the plot. I'll get into some of the maybe more of the spoiler stuff towards the end, and maybe some of the implications. But I thought there's really good use of light throughout the movie, especially because it's in a cave setting, so you think it'd be really dark, but it's really interesting. You know, they use a lot of the flares, so there's a lot of red lighting, green lighting, if they're using like those glow sticks that you can break open, and then there's also a lot of white light too. So it's just really interesting to use like headlamps and flashlights. You get like the white lighting, and then red and green from the different types of flares or glow sticks. So that was really interesting. It works really well throughout the movie. It can kind of serve to detract from some of the gore. One of the alternate posters for the movie, the one that I didn't use, I like the one that I used better, but there's another popular one where Sarah's coming out of like a pool of blood and stuff like that. It's pretty gross, but with the lighting, it kind of makes it a little bit more easy to stomach. I keep saying that, you know, Sarah is pretty much our main character, our main antagonist, but they do focus on a lot of the other characters, which is really nice. So there's a couple sisters, and their, you know, relationship comes into play a little bit. And then the Juno and Sarah they have a big confrontation because it's hinted at pretty early on, and it's pretty obvious. I thought it was obvious that Juno was probably having an affair with Sarah's husband Paul before he was killed in that crash. I think it's pretty obvious, semi spoiler, but so there's a lot of tension and friction that results from that, and comes to head a couple times within the movie. There's some nasty, excuse me, there's some nasty injuries in this movie. So, I mean, what you can probably imagine from a movie dealing with caves and, you know, rappelling certain areas. There's there's a fall and a broken leg. I'll say that much. And woo, it gives me the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it now. And I think there's quite a few of them do die from these creatures, and the deaths are all pretty good. I think they're all handled really nicely. The climbing parts, I thought they're really visceral and they work well. I've done a little bit of climbing, nothing intense like outdoors, or they're doing in here in the caves, but just knowing a little bit of the physical nature of it and what's involved kind of helps you appreciate what they're trying to do in a couple of these scenes. I thought they're done really well. It's really nice. It gets you like heart pumping. You're kind of like, gets you into it, gets you on the edge of your seat. Worked really well. I thought it was also really nice to see strong women portrayed in a movie. You know, usually they might be played as just the bimbo-y types or played as fodder, and the focus might go towards the men a little bit more, but there's no men in the movie, so I thought it was really nice to see them, and they don't just get hunted and just get, you know, tracked down one by one. They fight back, and I thought it was really, really interesting to see that, and really nice, a bit of a change. So that was cool. On the more of the production side, I was pretty impressed to read that everything that they have done in here is all just sets. There's no real caves in the movie, so I was really impressed actually. And I guess it makes a little more sense with the lighting. It's pretty dim, and you could probably get away with a bit more forgiving, but still done very well. So I was a bit surprised to learn that all the caves were sets. That's pretty cool. And I had two other things I was going to mention. Spoilers a little bit if you didn't want to get into this, but if you have seen the movie, I think it's really interesting, and it's one of those things that they do at the end, and some people hate it, but some people like it. It deserves another watch or two because there's multiple interpretations of what happened, and I think it's kind of weird and unfortunate because there's apparently two versions of the movie. So there's I don't know what you'd call it, the regular version and the unrated version. but they're actually, one's like the American version and the other is the British version. So I think the British version is technically called like the uncut, and the ending is a lot more clear and uh, not ambiguous compared to the American version. So the version I saw is okay. So spoilers, here they come. Sarah escapes. She climbs out through a light, gets into her car, starts driving away. Parks. She's like, I think she throws up. She's like overwhelmed. Looks over and sees like the ghost of Juno, all bloody and stuff, and then it cuts. So that's the version I saw. I think that's the American version. The British version, which I also think is the uncut version, this all happens similar way. She sees the ghost of Juno, or just her bloody, and then she wakes up and she's back in the cave and she sees a light. This is Sarah. She sees a light, sees it, looks forward, sees her daughter who's dead by a birthday cake, and she like smiles and just like crawls towards her, and then it cuts out. So yeah, it's very, very different interpretation of what's happening at the end. So with the one I saw, you could just say, well, she got out. Obviously, she's leaving, and she's just, because of something maybe that happened in the cave, she is being haunted by what happened to Juno. The British version, the uncut version, it's a little less. It's a little more confusing. So she didn't get out of the cave, and it just brings up a lot of questions of what really happened in the cave. So, and to go into it a little further, even more spoilers if you're still listening. A lot of people think that there were none of these creatures in the cave. There weren't people in there that have been, deformed over centuries. That this is all in Sarah's imagination. When she gets stuck in the cave at a certain part, when she gets almost stuck and couldn't get out, she snaps, and this is her killing all of her friends. So, and I didn't read this until the end, until I watched the movie. I read about the different ending, and I was reading about other people's interpretations, and I was like, ooh, that adds a pretty different element to the movie, pretty cool, and definitely probably, I'm going to watch it again, maybe try to get the other version, just to see, maybe that's kind of a theory that's loosely plausible, but who knows. Definitely be interesting to watch it again to see if that might be the case. So, one of those kind of movies that has twists that are maybe left up to the viewer to decide what they want to interpret it. Also, so, I don't know how you'd hear this, but that'll be the end of the spoilers. So, one other thing I wanted to mention was I was looking at the poster, and the one that I have on my blog is all of the women are arranged to make like a skull. It's a really cool image. And then I saw that you could it was based on a previous photograph or a painting by Salvador Dali. So I looked into it. It was originally a painting by Salvador Dali, and there's also a portrait of Salvador Dali with these women. So it's like a photograph of him in the foreground with some naked women arranged like this, like a skull. That's called Salvador Dali in Voluptate Mors or something like that. I think it's French. But anyway, so that's interesting. I was like, oh, that's cool. But then that same image of the naked women with the Salvador. All right, so I gotta make this short. Got cut off there. So what I was saying, same image with the women arranged like a skull is also on the cover of Silence of the Lambs. So Silence of the Lambs, the poster with Jodie Foster's face, with the moth covering her mouth, the death head moth, I can't talk, the death head moth, the skull on the moth is actually the image of the naked women arranged in the skull from the Salvador Dali portrait. So I just thought that was interesting, kind of a cool fact to learn. So yeah, really good movie. I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5. I'm definitely going to rewatch it to try to catch some of the subtleties or to see if there's any value in that other theory about maybe what was actually happening in the cave. Not sure if I'll check out, there is a sequel. Not sure if I'll check that out. I have a feeling it's going to be a bit more of the same. And I don't know if it's directed by Neil Marshall or not. I don't think it is. No, it's not. So probably won't check that out. A couple of the movie connections. I thought of Pandorum just because of the creatures, evolving in the caves. Had a similar feel in that movie, Pandorum. Something similar is happening, I believe, if I remember correctly. My Bloody Valentine is a movie that takes place, I think, in caves. So, or like a mine, I guess. It's about miners. Haven't seen it. I thought that might be similar. But then I saw that there's also another movie called The Cave, and that has a very similar plot to this. Haven't heard of it really before I watched this. I was just kind of doing some research. So that's probably not that good because I couldn't even tell you who's in it, or other than it's about people getting killed in a cave, But who knows? So yes, I would definitely check this out if you haven't. If you like horror, if you like thrillers, it's got a lot going on for it. Very good movie. So, all right.